This is going to sound like so much hate, and I swear it's not.
Welcome to the Warner Brothers podcast. My name is Keenan, joined by my brother Kyle, joined by Timmy. I know it's been a little bit of a delay, but we are back here, excited to talk football. It's been a lot of football since we've been gone, boys. How are we feeling about the NFL, and how you guys doing?
Doing pretty well. I'm pretty excited to talk. Like you said, it's been, I think, 2 weeks now since we recorded last, so definitely good. Got a lot of catching up to do. I'm ready for it.
Yes. How about you, Kyle?
Yes, very excited to talk football. Lots has happened in the sports world, not just the football world, not just the NFL. So, definitely got some stuff I want to get off my chest when it pertains to this sports.
Yeah, absolutely.
World.
I mean, you've got a trade we'll probably be talking about later, the Karl Anthony Towns trade, the blockbuster trade in the NBA. The WNBA playoffs actually have not been disappointing. The first round's over with. Second round, you got the Liberty up 2-0 on the Aces if they can make a comeback to get their three-peat. So baseball started. Obviously, baseball postseason has started, so best time to watch baseball. Like everything, this is prime time, and then we just had sports, the NBA Media Day yesterday. So I was gonna say everything right now. This October is the month of sports because it's when everything's getting going, starting, ending. So it's great. But we are going to be up.
I believe we even have our first preseason game for the NBA this
Yes, Friday. I believe we do as well. I believe we do. So
that's what.
Everything's right around the corner, and I'm excited to talk about all of the stuff when it comes time. But right now, it is football time. Kyle alluded to this before the season, kind of when he was going through. He had his tier ranking, and he gave a tier list. I was excited to see it because Kyle likes to give lists every now and again, but I give more lists than he typically does. But he said he was going to have one every 4 weeks, and if I check my watch, right, it's 4 weeks. So we've got another tier list. Got another tier list from Kyle. We're going to break this kind of like it's in quarters of the season, of course. So, Kyle, without further ado, I'll let you lead yourself off and get into it.
Let me preview also, we just mentioned the NBA. Maybe we'll have to do an NBA tiers list, like maybe bi-monthly or maybe monthly in the NBA. But I almost did not make this tier list. I thought about going 6 weeks and going week 6, weeks 12, weeks 18. But I like doing it monthly. There's a lot of teams who are right dead set in the middle, it seems like. So this was in a way, easier tier list to make, but I kind of split it up nicely to where I think we got good balance. Some teams were.
I do have a question for you. So before, obviously, the season hasn't started yet, so everything is projection, and you kind of based it maybe not on who exactly you had ranked at what wins and everything. Now, is this tier ranking okay, so maybe not 1 through 32, this is exactly the 16th best, but these are in order what you would assume the worst to best teams in the league are?
To some degree, yes. So this is why I like tiers, because it's not a power ranking necessarily. You can group teams together. So, I mean, there's teams that, like I said, there's a lot of 1 and 3, 2 and 2 teams of random assortment. Some bad teams that I think are going to be, nowhere to be found when it comes to week 13. But right now, they're 2 and 2 and, with the likes of the Niners. But we wouldn't put them in the same tier. Yeah. So it's all over.
Absolutely. The Panthers and the Bengals, I know they just played and the game was semi-close, but in 6 weeks, we don't feel the Bengals and the Panthers are going to have the same record because we feel the Bengals should have a better record. Obviously, we don't know. They lost to the Commanders, who look like a better team than we thought, and they lost to the Patriots, which was a bad loss. But that's why the power rankings don't fully work, because you might feel better about the Bengals than you do even the Commanders per se, and they're 3-1. Not saying you do or don't, but that's where it gets interesting. So I agree with that. And whenever you are ready,
we can jump right into it. Tim, we're actually going to start with a team who has probably been your favorite team to talk about one way or another, and they're in their own tier. That is the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Okay, what is the name of this Jags tier? Or did you have
The
names for these
Jacksonville
tiers? Or
Jaguars.
did you?
No, they are their own tier right now.
I love it.
And I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Obviously, Tim, they're not a disappointment to you per se because you predicted all this.
I expected this.
And I think, I don't know. I think most people who watch the NFL, we think that they could go either way. They were either going to be a mid to top tier team with their talent, or they could be bust potential, as we saw at the end of last year. So this wasn't necessarily a surprise to you, but would you still consider them a disappointment? Because again, I think most of the league would consider them a disappointment, even though they had bust potential. So how do you feel about that through the first month?
I definitely don't think I picked them to go 0-4. So it is definitely a disappointment. I think this team, even though I crapped on them, I said they're bottom of the barrel, everything's going to go wrong for them, and it looks true right now. They're not as bad as people think they are. They were right in that Texans game, they could have got that game. They were right in the Dolphins game, they could have got that game. Like, the problem with them is they don't have any clutch right now. They don't have any consistent coaching when they need it. So another thing that confuses me is they're playing man defense like 75% of the time, and they're terrible at it. Like, they're good at stopping the run, but they are bad at stopping the pass. So I don't know what the deal is, because this whole year it's just been a theme that zone defenses are like stopping quarterbacks from playing good football. It's not man. So I don't know the idea there. But I think they are definitely a disappointment, because, like I said, I didn't pick them going 0-4. I think I had them at like 1-3. So I did expect them to get a win, and then they don't have it yet. And I don't know with their upcoming schedule where they're going to get one. So
let me I'll say their upcoming schedule real
They have
quick.
the Colts this weekend.
Colts, Bears, Patriots, Packers. So probably that Patriots game on October 20th. But honestly, let's be completely honest with you right now.
I could see it going 0-8.
Here's the honest truth about it. Unless Bill Belichick comes back for that Patriots game to coach against the Patriots, and it's all over. But the truth of the matter is this: they've played 4 games, 3 of them winnable. That Texans game is winnable. The Browns game is winnable, and the Dolphins game is winnable.
2 of them they should have won, and really, honestly, that Browns game they should have won.
Why they lost was their quarterback play. Obviously, they were playing bad situationally, but like, it wasn't only their quarterback play. Their defense did enough, but it's bad coaching and bad quarterback play is why they lost.
They're just sloppy. They're stupid. They're sloppy, which is what they were last year in their losses. I mean, they started, was it 8-3 or 7-3?
They were 8-3 playing for the 1 seed on Monday night against the Bengals, and then from that loss, they have not won a game since.
Right, and they're plenty talented. They're not disciplined. Obviously, that's coaching, but I mean, they just do the stupidest things, like fumbling on the goal line. Okay, that happens. Like, that happens rarely, but it happens. But that's the type of shit that happens to them, right? Specifically, but in that Browns game, in that Dolphins game, and then in this past game on Sunday. They can not score inside the 5 at all. I don't know what it is. It's partly play calling. I can't really call all of that Trevor Lawrence's fault when it's play calling, but then again, I mean, you can audible. I know the play on the 4th.
I'm calling it his fault because if he's supposed to be Peyton Manning, then it's his fault.
Sure.
If he's supposed to be just some regular quarterback, I'm good with, like, then you're okay. Like, if it's Sam Darnold making those mistakes, so I know we're going to talk about him, but like, then it makes sense. Like, coming into the season, what we thought of him, and even if Sam Darnold made those now, it makes sense.
So
he's
you're
supposed to be Peyton Manning. That can't happen.
You're absolutely right. I gave him too much bail there, especially. I mean, like, I think we've been early. All 3 of us, I think we've been early on the. Is Trevor Lawrence really that guy? Is he really
more money, more problems? The tier we had. He was 16. He's dropping. So we're gonna have to give a quarterback ranking halfway through the year, and we're gonna have something to talk about.
So I mean, you're right. Maybe I gave him like a little bit too much grace there, but because it definitely is his fault too. But I mean, you hardly ever see people get stopped that badly on a QB draw inside the 5, especially with someone as athletic as Trevor Lawrence. Like, I don't know. It just seems like they're snake bitten to some degree, but it's coaching. And I think it's 100% coaching. Mm-hmm. And then, Trevor Lawrence deserves quite a bit of blame. He's just completely inaccurate.
I think that also him playing like that builds a culture. Like, I'm going to use Joe Burrow for an example, because both teams before they got their number one overall pick weren't in great spots. The Jags were not in a great spot, not a great organization. Bengals not in a great spot. Their owners are known to be very cheap. But Joe comes in with the Joe Cool, regardless of how you feel about him and whatever. Obviously, he doesn't always play well week 1, 2, but got him to a Super Bowl, perennial in the playoffs when he's healthy. He changes life because he changes the culture mentally. Like, people still feel like we can go out and win with this guy, even if he's playing bad. With Trevor, it's like they almost give up at times. Like, this team just like will fold. It's like, if we don't get off hot, we can't do anything. And like this guy's not bringing us back until you see things like that 4th and down, like where you're just like, why is there no push? Do we not have any energy or effort? And like, I think that comes down obviously to coaching, and it comes down to quarterback. And I think from there, it kind of trickles down where it's everyone's fault because they're still players. They have to do their job.
That's where I have trouble. That's where I have trouble with the Jags, though. I'm not saying I disagree, but I don't find them to be soft, right? They definitely folded in that Bills game. I find them to be stupid. Usually you do, like, you take on, like you said, Keenan, you take on your quarterback's DNA. And yeah, Joe Burrow is such a leader that he changes the franchise around. I'm not knocking Trevor Lawrence for that per se. He's got a laid back personality, or seems to. But they're in these games. They should have won that Texans game. They should have won that game in Miami. Like, they will literally be playing good football, sound football. You know, maybe not the most accurate, but really, who is in this league aside from a few quarterbacks at this point? And, you know, they'll make use of their talent. They'll make use of ETN. They'll make use of Brian Thomas Jr. They will make use of all these guys. And then, you know, 4th quarter comes and they just shoot themselves in the foot in the most ridiculous ways inside the 5. So that's why they're weird to me. That's why they're in their own tier. And I can't even, like, my next group would be season's over. And I got the Pats, I got the Titans, and I got the Carolina Panthers in there. All right? I can't yet put the Jags in there just because they have so much talent. Just because, as you said, Keenan, they got the Colts this weekend. They've got the Bears and then the Pats, both in London, which are weirdly kind of like home games for them. So I can't all the way count them out because by the time we get to the end of October, they could be 4-4 for all we know.
Mm-hmm.
Who is their last game in October after that Bears game?
So their October schedule is the Colts at home, or they're technically the home team Colts, and then they play the Bears, technically on the road, even though it's their home, and then they play the Patriots, technically on the road or at home, and then it's the Packers. So like, they're probably realistically they could go 2-2. Like, I think I might predict them for, like, the Colts game's interesting. Depends on what quarterback. I'd honestly feel like better with Flacco than the Richardson to win that game. And then just all depends on what Bears team you get, what Patriots team you get, and then obviously the Packers. So. But yet your season's over tier, real quick, just to touch on them. There's nothing really to talk about with them. Their season's over. Titans look like Will Levis, who I thought was actually going to be okay. I had him, I thought he was, he showed flashes last year. He did, some bad things, but he did some good things. His first, true start, I think it was 4 touchdowns, and him and DeAndre Hopkins got on a great foot. He's going to throw you one, and it's going to be a bad one.
He's going to throw you 2 or 3.
He's not good. That's it. Nothing else. Carolina's going to be cool. The Patriots, hopefully, if they can generate any offense. But, yeah, that's it.
There are more teams I could put in this tier, technically. Those are the only 3 I feel pretty definitive about. Had this Sunday went a few different directions, maybe I would have added a few more. I actually have a couple teams in multiple tiers. I was kind of keeping them in 2 different tiers to see, all right, which do they fit better in? But there really is some that could fit in a couple different tiers. So you might see the Panthers actually in another tier in a few minutes here. But I think because of the 3 teams in front of them in their division, who we will talk about, they for right now are in season's over. And that's a cool thing about this exercise is every 4 weeks, you never know what this list is going to be, truly. I mean, The Pats, I expect them to be in the same place, right, in 4 weeks here. But given some injuries, given some other things, maybe the Panthers are around 500. Who knows? They look a little better with Andy Dalton. So you might see a couple teams appear in a couple tiers, almost like a Venn diagram. So,
Timmy, what are your thoughts here?
I don't mind it. I think The Titans are a team that I'm a little confused on. Like you said, you're not ready to, put the nail in the coffin in the
Mm,
Jags. I am, by the way, and I do have a question for you.
fair, fair, fair.
If the Jags fall to 0-6, is that enough to put them in the tier? Like if they
If they
lose this
lose
game
this
against the
Sunday, if they
Colts?
lose this Sunday to the Colts, they are completely in this tier.
Okay.
The fact, I mean, honestly, it's because they have the Colts in their division and the Titans in their division that really gives them life. And we said they have the Pats, Bears are kind of in the middle here, so they have winnable games. They can technically somehow turn their season around, and they've looked good enough, right? It hasn't been the Bills game every game for them. Like they're shooting themselves in the foot. It's all correctable mistakes. But
Yeah, here's
if
the
the
one
Colts had
thing
won
though.
one more game, like if the Colts were sitting on 3 wins right now, Jags are in the Patriots tier. So
They better
and
win their next 3
exactly.
because in order, they play the Packers at home, the Eagles on the road, they play the Vikings at home, they play the Lions on the road, and then they play the Texans.
And
So they
before you go, Keenan,
yikes.
before you go, the reason why I have the Titans in seasons over, Keenan said it. Will Levis is just comically bad. Like he's terrible. He's
Well, I think they have a blessing. I think his injury, not only did it give us some good memes, I think Mason Rudolph is going to play better than Will Levis, and I think they might make that switch and just let him play it out because the Titans are realistically Will Levis away from being 3-1 right now. They could have won against the Jets and they could have won Week 1 against the Bears if he just wasn't their quarterback.
I
They
would
could be
let
3-1.
I
they're
would
gonna have
let
to
him
turn
ride it out
into
for the season, be the worst team in the league, and then get the number 1 overall pick and fix it.
That's the thing about the
Because
Titans is they have talent. They have enough to at least be a middle of the pack team, and they still
defensively,
could
they're
end up
good.
there.
They've
But
been good all year defensively.
Will Levis isn't
You
the
haven't-
guy like I'm talking about the Jags like possibly correcting mistakes. I don't see that happening with Will Levis. I could see him accidentally winning you some games because he had a throw against the Jets, right? Where he somehow squeezed it, I believe, to Ridley, and it easily could have been picked. Like it was fractions away from
It
being
should have
picked.
been picked. I thought it was picked watching
Yeah.
that play. I was like, oh yeah, that's a pick. It was crazy.
Exactly. So he's going to accidentally win you games, but I think he's going to lose games more often than not. And he plays like someone who drinks mayonnaise in their coffee, so it's his fault.
There's
It's his
not
fault.
more I need to talk about. Season's over. The season's over for a reason.
Season's over. Jags got their own tier. This next tier, they could all easily go into season's over territory, depending how their next few games go, next month goes. Injury bug team, and that's the Dolphins. That is the Browns, and that's the Rams. They are all the way banged up. The Rams and Dolphins in particular, I had them nearing the playoffs at least. Like they were, I think each of them were bubble teams. I'd have to look back. I might have even had the Dolphins in there, but I think I had the Dolphins at 9 wins, and I had the Rams somewhere between 7 and 9. And I mean, the Rams by week 2 were decimated. Dolphins obviously too. They got some injuries on their defense, but they're where they are largely because of injuries, as well as the Browns too. Their offensive line is all the way banged up. So I do think had they been healthy, that we're looking at least at 2-2 teams here. It's weird to give the Browns that many props because they've looked terrible this season as well, much like the Jags, and a lot of that's Deshaun, but he has nobody blocking for him. So, any objection or any comments about this tier?
Could
Timmy,
you
you go
list?
first.
Could you list the teams again? You said the Browns.
Dolphins, Browns, and the Rams.
Okay. With the Rams, I could see where they turn it around just because they're gonna get Cooper Kupp back. They're gonna get Puka back later on. Puka, they just said, is probably another month out. If they can win this week, I'm okay with the Rams being, a comeback team. The Dolphins are definitely a disappointment to me. Since the Tua injury, they haven't scored a touchdown. They have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane. They have talent. They should be scoring at least a little bit, especially
They should
against
at least be
the
moving the
Titans.
ball.
Exactly. So for them not to just completely be incompetent on offense with Mike McDaniels, who's an offensive-minded head coach, that is definitely a big disappointment for me. I don't see them winning many more games without Tua, and then once he comes back, I think it's probably too far gone. So I do agree with that. So
Yeah, I think I'm fine with the Browns and the Dolphins being there. I think I need to see what the other tiers are. I think the Rams could move up. They're interesting to me, just because I do think they have the Packers this week. They really needed that Bears game. They got to the red zone so many times. Stafford had a couple bad decisions late in that game too, but they needed that Bears game because they got a surprise win against the 49ers. Obviously, it was going to be a close game, but they got a it's definitely an upset win over the 49ers. They were a touchdown underdog, and so they could have made themselves 2-2 and then afforded to lose this Packers game against a really good Packers team. Gotten because then you have the Raiders, the Vikings, the Seahawks, the Dolphins, the Patriots next. If you were 2-2, you could get 3-3, get 5-5, and then you guys could go on some sort of maybe a little run at the end. Um, so I think that their last loss was actually a costly one, even though, especially because you're playing a Bears team when they're at their most vulnerable with Caleb not being great. He's gotten a little bit better every week, but he still hasn't been great. But what I do want to say real quick before we move on to the next one is I think that right now Tua is showing his value because I get it that like, and I get obviously that when you put him in with bad quarterback play like Skylar Thompson and then obviously Tyler Huntley, I think is a fine quarterback, but you have to put him in the right system. It's showing either that Mike McDaniels needs a guy like Tua or a guy of that caliber to be good, because we even saw Kyle Shanahan insert like CJ Beathard or insert whomever, and they had competent offenses that could compete at whatever level. Did not matter who, and this was before McCaffrey, this was before anything. So it was like whatever quarterback's there, he can make plays enough. Or even Sean McVay when you had a Baker that no one cared about, you could make plays enough to where like your team didn't look like they were incompetent. The Dolphins have looked
Sure.
incompetent over these last few weeks, so I think it says a little bit about Tua, about like how actually like he is more valuable than maybe some people do feel, and I think it says a little bit about Mike McDaniel that he's still a very good offensive mind, but I don't. We put him on the level of Shanahan and McVay, and I don't know if he's on that level.
I don't necessarily know if people put McDaniel on that level, but I do think
I've heard a lot of like he's just like one of the brilliant offensive minds. He's really good.
that's the
But
thing.
I just, like, if
I
he's
would
not,
put him.
you go on.
I was just gonna say so. I was gonna reply to both of you and say I'm very disappointed in Mike McDaniel's in this stretch. Um, exactly for the reasons you gave, Keenan. You would expect him to put his players in position, and especially with the amount of talent he has, that should be a pipe dream for a backup quarterback. Like just being able to hand it off to Achan, and Tyreek Hill and Waddle. You can do a variety of things with just those three guys right there with the speed they have. And so, I mean, exactly like you guys said, I don't necessarily think he's in Shanahan's class, Keenan, but I do think he's like a step below that, right? So I am disappointed in his coaching. Um, but I mean, that's why these three teams in particular, and I'll get to the Dolphins again. These three teams in particular are right here because they have so much talent, because it's not really their fault where they are. And weirdly, the Dolphins, they get the Pats this week. We'll talk about that probably Friday, but winnable game, you can't all the way count them out. Whereas if they lose that game, they're definitely going to be in the Patriots and whoever else I got back here, the Panthers. They're going to be in the season's over tier, right? Like their schedule gets insanely tough.
Yeah,
Because yeah, no, the Rams, like all three of those teams, if they were healthy, I believe they'd at least be 2-2 right now. All three of them in some form or fashion. So not really their fault, but this is a fun tier right here. Don't let us get more wins. Actually, sorry, no. I skipped one. My bad. Mid off. You're gonna be happy about this, Tim. Your Giants are in here. So I got the Giants, the Colts, the Raiders, the Broncos, and the Bears, who might pop up. Might pop up again. I think those are I want to say boring, but especially when you talk about the Giants, Raiders, Broncos, and Bears, their games aren't too exciting right now. Colts at least give you the Anthony Richardson factor. They give you the Joe Flacco factor this past week. They're kind of a mixed bag. But the Giants, the Raiders, the Broncos, and the Bears, they just got some boring ass games. Their defense kind of carries them here and there. We can talk Devontae Adams too a little bit here, I guess, as well. But I think those are the mid of the mid teams. Any other teams you'd add there for the mid off teams?
Timmy, you go, and then I'll chime in.
not positive on teams I would add. Like I think if anything, I would, like I said, the Titans. I think the
Mm.
Titans could definitely be right in this class.
Titans.
If you wanted to Venn diagram them in
This
that
would have been
order.
the other team I put in there. Would have been the Titans, and I very well
Yeah.
could put them in both to Venn diagram them. Yeah, the Titans would be there. They have enough talent, and technically,
So
honestly, the Jags could be there too. But I mean, the Jags are just disappointing, as we
so
said.
when we're saying mid, I mean obviously mid is like in the middle, but like are we defining like a 9 and 8 level style team mid, or are we saying like a lower kind of like they're mid like eh?
Anywhere from 7 to 9 to 9 and 7 to
Then I would
pretty
add the Saints personally. I
very
think that the
interesting.
Saints have flashes, but I think
Very
that
interesting.
I think they have high highs, low lows. To me, that would make mid.
I would disagree only because I mean we've seen their highs. We've seen their highs, and we didn't. I don't think we really got to talk about that Eagles Saints game. Um,
No.
that was a weird game that I was actually kind of encouraged by. Aside from the 73-yard burst by Saquon, like the Eagles should have lost that game. I don't necessarily think like the Eagles kind of got bailed out by that Saquon play, and they were terrific on
Oh,
defense, but
I,
offensively, I don't think they deserved to win that game. Um,
excited to talk about that team too.
was that?
I'm excited to talk about the Eagles too. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
Yeah.
I
So
would add. I would personally have the Saints around. Like maybe if they're a tier ahead, like if they're in the next tier, like or something like that. Like I would have them around mid to me. Like if we're defining mid, like really middle of the pack, then I would have them there. I know obviously this is technically at the lower scale of the league because we've only gone over
well,
12 teams, but
remember
like
my mid tier in preseason, my mid tier was also either followed or preceded by the fun tier. So it was all middle of the pack, but different tiers of mid. So
yeah, okay,
this
so
is like
like
I can't imagine them getting above 9 and 7 range right now as we're going into
fair.
to week 5. Whereas the Saints, they got a big jump. We've seen explosive plays from them. That Eagles game,
Okay.
like that was great coaching. That wasn't necessarily the Saints shitting the bed to me. So I think in general they're a good offense, but we'll talk about the Saints very soon. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, yeah, yeah. Any
I would
more?
agree with the rest of it, though. I think the Bears have the potential to move up. That really comes down to Caleb Williams. Can he be what's advertised? Not even just like, can he be like a generational kind of guy? Just like, can he be good? Like, if he can be served good, the defense is showing great. And if DeAndre Swift can be what we thought DeAndre Swift could be and run like he did last week, then actually that team has a lot of potential and has obviously playoff potential. Raiders to me, fine there, especially with I guess Antonio Pierce liking a tweet that said that Devontae Adams playing his last game there. That's what are we doing here? That's odd. The Colts are the definition of mid. Like they're just so they're like their highs and lows, but their highs are not like the Saints highs, but their lows can be really low. Denver is just looks like a decent, like a well coached, decent team. Defensively, they're going to play. They're going to be in games. Offensively, Bo Nix is going to is going to be good. He had a great game. He's been solid, and they're just going to be a solid team. So
Threw for
they're
60
a
yards
tough out.
Sunday.
What?
Threw for a whole 60 yards Sunday.
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna say he was bad against the Jets. He was really good the game before, and he was in the other two. Like he's just been like a solid one. And then the Giants, Malik Neighbors. That's it. The defensive line, Malik Neighbors. That's real. Malik Neighbors is he's
Actually,
creeping into top 10 receiver already, and I'm not like maybe hyperbolic. I don't care. Like he is lit. He
he's
is
playing like it.
legitimately lit.
He's playing like
Him and
it.
Marvin both like I understand Marvin hasn't been as flash so far as Malik. Both of them already. You're like there's not many receivers where you're like, man, they're much better. Like you see Amon Ra and you're like, Amon Ra, he's done more, but like you look at the both, you're like, it's not like they're that far off
They're
already
ready made.
for both of them.
They're ready
So
made. They're ready made pros. I actually do want to talk about the Giants because they seem to be exactly where they are 2 years ago when they made the playoffs, where really they made it by schedule. I don't think they were that good of a team, but they seemed very well coached. They seemed fundamental, and they kind of seem that way this year to me. I actually thought they were going to look bad, and they've kind of like looked competent in these games. Some of that schedule, but they look professional. They don't look like the Jaguars where you're like, okay, what the fuck are you doing? Right? They actually look like they have a plan. They actually look well coached, which is kind of perplexing to me because I mean they could easily be in the season's over tier. we'll talk about why they're not here in a little bit as we get to these other tiers. Um, so by proxy of their division and by them just looking okay, um, they don't have a ton of talent, but Neighbors makes a difference. Singletary's playing well right now. Daniel Jones isn't making too many mistakes. So they look okay. And I almost wonder, like, if they get to 6 or 7 wins, would they keep Dable around? Because he doesn't look like a bad coach right now. He doesn't look overmatched. He doesn't look like he's lost the locker room. So they're a very interesting team, and it's terrible that they're supposed to be one of the premier franchises, a historic franchise, and they just how are you the same exact place you were 2 years ago, but basically gain a receiver via the draft? That's
Yeah.
really it. So
I'm going to let you go off, Timmy, in just a second. I just wanted to say one thing. I know this team is not terrible because if a terrible team started the game the way they started against the Browns, they would have been blowing the doors off. And that was muff up kick, the fumble, first play of the game, touchdown, second play of the game. It was 7-0 before you could blink an eye. And they actually came back and won the game. And they controlled the rest of the game. And at bad teams, when that happens, it's next thing's a 3-and-out, and then that team just runs all over them, and it just rolls and rolls. I know the Browns aren't a great team, but like bad teams, that affects them more than that. So I want to give the Giants credit by not letting a one touchdown, how it happened, get in their head. But Timmy, your thoughts on your home team?
The Giants of last year would have muffed that kick, fumbled, got scored on, and then immediately thrown a pick and got scored on again. And like you said, next thing you know, it's 35-0. Out of that whole tier that Kyle listed, Daniel Jones is the best quarterback in that tier. I don't think that's even like an argument. I think most people would take Daniel Jones over all those guys.
Caleb has the most potential, but as of right this moment,
he's not playing better.
No,
Absolutely
he's not playing.
not.
It's not. He's Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones playing better than Richardson, then Minshew, then Bo Nix, then Caleb Williams. There, honestly, the conversation would be Jones and Bo Nix.
Jones and Joe Flacco.
And
we'll see what Flacco can do. We'll see what Flacco can do, but it'd be Bo Nix and him right now.
Flacco looks ready for a Super Bowl run. That's all I'm gonna say. He looks primed and ready.
Miami should trade for him. Let's be honest here.
New England should trade for him.
That'd be crazy. I actually like what Daniel Jones is doing. I think he's playing competently. He's not turning over like he normally does. He hasn't fumbled, I don't think, at all this year. I think he has like 6 picks, which is a little bit high, but he's got a high completion percentage. He's making the throws. He's throwing it to his guys. We're seeing Wandale and Malik both getting double-digit targets, and it's moving the offense. What worries me is once they get into the red zone, they just stall out. They just don't score touchdowns, which is weird because, 2 weeks ago against the Browns, that's all they did was score touchdowns, but then they go up against the Cowboys, and they just could not get it. That Cowboys game...
It would have been a blowout Giants if they scored in the red zone.
Yeah, they had 5 trips, and they all just report
a legitimately blowout Giants if they got into the red zone and scored touchdowns.
I do. The first drive of the game, the Giants got called a face mask penalty on the tight end Daniel Bellinger, and then they show the play, and it's not the case at all. He's the one getting face masked. It blew my mind that they did that. Like, they got to have some sort of secondary officiating crew that's like, "Are you guys blind? That's crazy." Because that cost them. They were rolling. I thought they were going to score a touchdown on that drive. They were moving. That play was a big play. It didn't get taken back. That's one thing they got to tighten up. Definitely is the penalties. It was the case in the Cowboys game, but I don't want to talk too much about the Giants. But I think the Giants are impressing a lot of people, even though they're 1-3 right now, just because they don't look like that team that's going to get blown out every week. The loss week 1 against the Vikings is starting to look like a good loss because the Vikings are killing a lot of teams. They're beating everybody. So I'm happy with where the Giants are. I think they're in a good spot.
Being good, being competent in games, and honestly losing games, like, it's not a terrible thing because it's showing you have promise. But if you do come out and get a better pick, it's not the worst thing in the world because the team's obviously not getting to a Super Bowl. Obviously, if you win games too, that looks good. Like, I'm not trying to make it seem like only tank, but it's not the worst thing in the world for a 20-15 loss to the Cowboys.
So the Giants, they don't have enough talent to win a Thursday night game against either the Cowboys or the Eagles in particular.
Or the Commanders, honestly.
But I do think,
Maybe.
like they play them on a Sunday off regular rest, that they could be either one of those teams right now, right? And I might feel different in week 8, but yeah, I expected, like after 2 weeks, I expected the Giants to be, way near the bottom of my list, but they've looked like, I mean, Daniel Jones is probably somewhere between a backup, a top tier backup, and the lower end starter, but he looks okay enough. He carries himself well enough with his team, and his teammates seem to respect him and respect Dable too. Like they remind me so much of that team from 2 years ago again, where they didn't have much talent. Difference is they have a tougher schedule. But who knows? We'll see the way the NFC East shakes out. Maybe they can get a few, you know, lucky wins here, or luck themselves into wins just by having good habits. So we'll see. So my next tier that I accidentally teased about 5 minutes ago, don't let us get more wins. And I've got the Bengals, the Chargers, the Commanders, the Bears, who are in the mid-off tier, the Falcons, the Saints, and the Cardinals.
Okay.
Any
So
teams that
can we
stick out
read
to
that
you?
one more time? So I can.
So I got the Bengals, the Chargers,
Yep.
the
Yep.
Commanders, the Bears,
Yep.
the
Yep.
Falcons, the Saints, and the Cardinals.
Yep. The Bears, the Falcons, the Saints, and the Cardinals.
Yes. Got a lot
Okay,
of
so
teams.
we have. Alrighty.
Got a lot of teams in the mid tier if you combine that with the mid off, right? So you've got these teams, and you're going to see one of these teams in particular in a future tier. But these teams are dangerous to me. The Bears, they finally showed how dangerous they can be when Caleb Williams doesn't do rookie things, when he can just kind of manage the game, right? They've got a talented enough defense and offense as far as weapons go to where they can really beat anybody. And that's how I feel about just about everyone on this list. The Commanders probably would have been in a lower tier before this past Sunday. I did not expect them to go in there and not only beat the Cardinals, but take their lunch. I mean, they absolutely like put it on them. I expected a shootout, and for them to dominate a really good offense, not necessarily a good team, but a good offense in the Cardinals, says a lot for right now. Who knows where they'll be in week 8, week 9, week 12? They could completely fall off. But for them to be 3-1 after month 1, and for Jaden Daniels to look the way he has, it's impressive. It's impressive. I compared it to RG3 in the group chat, and thing with RG3, that started to heat up mid-season. He was doing impressive plays. He had highlights all season, but that really started to heat up mid-season. This is month 1 for Jaden Daniels, and he looks like a problem, to say the least. So I've got more thoughts on just about every team in this tier, but I want to hear from you guys.
Timmy, do you have all the teams written down?
Nope.
Okay, so I'm gonna go. I'm gonna
I'll
go
give it to
quickly
you like
through
this:
them.
the only 2 AFC teams I got in here are Bengals and Chargers. After
I
that,
have them all written down.
yeah,
So I'm gonna go through them one by one
right.
real quickly. I think Arizona I like in this tier because they're a team that offensively has talent right now. They haven't always been playing up to snow. Like they should have played. They definitely should have scored more on that Washington defense. That Washington defense is not really good, but they're still finding their footing. So they're an interesting team. Don't let them get more wins because if they do get rolling, they could be a little dangerous. The Saints, I agree with you in this. So now that I see what tier you have here, I'm fine with the Saints being here because they're a team. Don't let them get more wins because if they do, they can hit those peaks where they can ruin a season. They're a team like a hot 3-point shooting team that can just ruin a game for somebody because they get hot from the 3-point line, and they can do that with points. Atlanta, I'm fine with it here, but they're someone that can move up because I think they have a little bit more structure to them. I don't understand. They just don't like to use Bijan, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. Like, they just don't. Like, Tyler Algiers getting work late game, and it's like, I get he's good, but, like, why did we draft Bijan this early if we're using Tyler Algier at this clip? Doesn't
Darnell
make
Mooney,
sense.
wide receiver 1.
Yeah, like it's just like why is Drake London like why did we get these skill position guys that we're not going to use at a high level? Like I understand that teams try to take these guys away, but you can't tell me teams take all 3 of them away and you can't scheme one of them open. Like and Bijan's doing great when he touches the ball. Pitts has been fine, and then Drake London's good when he touches the ball. He just has to get it. Then you got Chicago.
Let's back up a little bit. Hold on. Let's back up a little bit. I do want to hear, Tim, you were very bullish on the Cardinals. I do want to hear your thoughts on the Cardinals.
Cardinals were in my disappointment tier. I thought they'd be they've just started so slow. I thought they would have meshed right from the get go. I thought Kyler would come back in and be Kyler, but the offense is definitely slow. Week one they didn't look they looked pretty good, but Marvin Harrison wasn't used at all. Then the next week they completely blow out the Rams, and then we just kind of lose that explosive play from the Rams in these next two games. I was definitely not expecting them to lose to the Commanders like they did. So they're definitely in my disappointment tier. Uh, quickly on this tier, I think you have it titled "Don't Let Us Get More Wins," but realistically, three of these teams are going to be playoff teams. If they're not playoff teams, they're right on the cusp of playoffs. So
And
some of
and
these
that's
teams are going to get some more wins.
and that's what the title. That's why the title is what it is, because
Right.
all these teams are going to win. It's just a matter of how much. Like if the Saints and Falcons in particular, and the Cardinals, but again, we'll go through each of these. But Saints and the Falcons, they have such reasonable offenses already with weapons, and the Saints in particular, they hit their stride seemingly the first 2 weeks. Falcons, they've impressed the hell out of me. I actually, especially after week one, just how rusty Kirk looked. I thought it was going to be to this point where we start saying, okay, we can start judging Kirk Cousins here, week 4, week 5, week 6. They've looked pretty damn good and pretty, like, aside from coaching, especially in that Chiefs game, Raheem Morris, I was not too fond of that game. Uh, but Kirk Cousins, and no, they're not using their weapons the way they should, maybe, but they're using them at least more than their previous era. And they just look like by the time week 12 happens and they are, let's say they're at 6 or 7 wins around week 12, that's dangerous for the league because then that's where they're really going to be peaking. That's where Kirk's going to have all these reps. That's where he's really going to have a rapport with these receivers, with these weapons. That could be dangerous. And if the Saints knock off, let's say they go 3-1 in the month of October and they're heading into November with 6 wins. They've got enough offense there. And I mentioned this when we did the tiers preseason. I had them, I think, either my mid tier or my bottom tier, somewhere near the bottom. But they have so many veterans and they have so many past performers that, have real success in this league on both ends of the ball. They're a scary playoff team, low key, because they're not going to be afraid of anybody. They still have Dennis Allen as their coach, but they're just not going to be afraid of anybody, and they've shown to be explosive. So we'll get to the other teams, but we talked about those three. Do you have any thoughts on the Bears, Keenan? Even though you already kind of talked about them.
So I'm not going to lie. I was just looking at this. I would have all of these teams, I think, fit where they kind of are. I would have it actually ordered a little different.
Well, there's no real order.
I think no. I mean, tiered different. That's kind of more so what I meant. I think I would have the Bengals, the Chargers, and the Falcons a tier ahead. I would have them in their own tier ahead, and then I would sneak the Rams up into the don't let us get more wins. I understand why they're, but I don't think you're wrong for where you have them.
I mean, the Rams are too injured. There. Rams are where they are.
No, so that's why I don't think you're wrong for having them there. But that's also one of the things where I think that the Dolphins and Browns seasons are not like their seasons are done because of their injuries. I don't think the Rams season is done because of their injuries. I think it has potential to be, which is why I would lead to the don't let us get more wins. Because if we do, we endured all of these injuries and we're still kind of doing that. I guess you could say the same thing like with the Dolphins because they're good, but like they look so incompetent offensively that's kind of what. So I don't think you're wrong for having them in the injury because they clearly are injured,
right?
To the key pieces. But at the same time, I think I could make a case that don't let us get more wins because we're still going to be able to be in these games. Don't let us get wins because we really could go off. And that's why I get why you have the Bengals there. They're 1-3, but at the same time, I feel like we all have a little bit more faith in the Bengals than a true 1-3 team. So I get everything you have. I think I could have it ordered different, but at the same time,
so here's the thing.
I would kind of agree with what you're saying.
So here's the thing. Again, that's why it's tiers. It's not really a ranking. It's more so like
I'm not
all
in
these
order.
guys,
I'm just saying I would
because I don't think what I saw from the Cardinals this past week kind of demoted them for me. Really, they were probably the toughest team for me to rank because I didn't have them in the NFC Championship game, obviously, but their offense is good enough to where you could build a good lead, and maybe your defense could be opportunistic. and I thought they were veteran enough to where they could win against the Commanders. Got blown out at home. I mean, that is as discouraging of a loss as you can have. Um, but the Rams, the reason why the Rams could be or were completely out of question for me in this tier, they don't get a lot of their guys back until week 8, probably, is when Puka and Cooper Cup are probably gearing up to come back. It's between, anywhere between week 7, week 12, really. And they are just so banged up, and they're in a division with the Cardinals, with the 49ers, with the Seahawks. Whereas the Bengals, who you could argue I could put in other tiers below, they've got so much talent, A, but B, what it really is, and we talked about this in preseason, is their schedule. They've got an incredibly easy schedule that still allows them to be in a position to weirdly contend if you have that much faith in them after a 1-3 start. So their talent mixed with their health, mixed with their schedule, that's why the Bengals are where they are. Whereas the Cardinals, I don't necessarily have more faith in them, but they have an explosive offense, and they've got an exciting team. They could win games. They could take advantage of the Rams. They could sneak into a playoff picture where that's not a team you want to play in week 13, week 14, get a shootout kind of thing. So, yeah, there's different layers to it. And the Chargers, they couldn't get a better time to buy here with week 5, with Herbert being banged up, with their D-line being banged up. How do you guys feel about the Commanders with this 3-1 start? Do you think it's real? Do you think it's a little opportunistic? Do you how do you feel?
Timmy, I'll let you go.
I think it definitely is a mix of both. I think the Cliff Kingsbury offense is going to slow down. I think this is kind of a hot start. But I do think they're playing, they're punching above their weight class for sure. Jaden's looking like he's a damn franchise QB right now, and he's only played 4 games in the NFL. So I think it's definitely a mix of both. But I think they're going to keep it on. I was kind of high on this team. I think I had them 8 and 9. So, I expect them to be right around 500 by the end of the season, because they are going to face some tough teams, and it's not going to be all, green pastures for Jaden Daniels here. There's going to be times where he's under pressure and he's going to make some mistakes. So we're going to see it coming up.
Give me a percentage right now, both of you, on almost call them the Redskins, the Commanders' chances to win the NFC East.
To win?
40%, and that would be the highest I have.
I was going to say 25%. If you were saying make playoffs, I think that's where I'm at, 40 to 50%.
I think they have a better chance to win the division than make the playoffs, I'm going to be quite honest with you. I don't love the Cowboys, and I think the Eagles have a lot of problems. I think you could win the division at 9 and 8. I don't know if you can make the playoffs as a wild card at 9 and 8. Fair. You might be able to. Again, a lot of teams are banged up, so and people are punching each other down. So obviously, now the Vikings, Packers, and Lions look like they all could 3-3 split in the division, because obviously they all look like they could maybe be 4-2, 3-3 in the division, because even the Bears are obviously tough. So so you could make it in realistically at 9 and 8, and that's just because the NFC has a lot more depth. But to me, I'm high. I like when I had the rankings for the Commanders, I went after, and I have more faith in them than I think I did preseason, even after week 1 and they lost. I like Jaden a lot, so I think it's a little of both, where, as Timmy said, kind of opportunistic in what you've had. You had a Bengals team that's not really defensively, they're having problems, but you played a phenomenal game against them. And then the Cardinals, you just beat up on the Cardinals. That's a good win. So you can't really hate on that. Obviously, they didn't punt. They punted 3 times in 3 games. So offensively, they've been great, and I don't think you can keep up that kind of potency.
I think you're being nice, though, Keen. I think it's back-to-back great wins for them.
Yeah,
not just good wins.
The Bengals they caught the Bengals defense at the right time, but that's a great win. I can't say the Bengals are a playoff contender and not say that's a great win. So if I made that seem like that, no, that's a great win. And I think the Cardinals win's a very good win because you dismantled them. It wasn't just like you won; you completely tore them apart. And you've got the Browns this coming week at home. Then you got a Ravens game that's going to be interesting, seeing Jaden versus Lamar. And then you've got a Panthers team. So it's realistic that you could be 5-2. And if you're 5-2 at that point, you've got to be, I think, I truly think that them for the division is more live than them for the playoffs. And I would 40% probably. I would have, if you had to fill it out, it'd be them at 40, the Eagles at 35, the Cowboys at 25, and then the Giants at 0. The Giants are winning the division. But like I'd have it like 40, 35, 25 would probably be where I have to equal out to 100%.
Can you just lay it out
Me
exactly why they're in this tier? Um, None of us would have had them at 3-1 after September, right? Maybe 500, maybe 1-3, maybe winless, but none of us would have had them at 3-1. The fact that, like you said, Keenan, the Cowboys and Eagles just look kind of shaky puts them in this position to where, like you said, they got winnable games, not necessarily games they should be favored in, but winnable games. They win 2 out of their next 3. That puts them in great position going forward, going into November.
And then they see the Bears, which are still up and down. They may be right by then. You never know. And then they see the Giants. Well, obviously it's a division game. There's 6-3 doesn't look like it's crazy. 6-3. Obviously the NFL changes, so like we've seen so many upsets, but 6-3 doesn't look like it's really crazy. I don't know if both the Cowboys and the Eagles could be 500. I don't know what their schedules look like exactly, so I can't exactly say, but like they both could be 500, and you could have 2 games up on them, and you haven't even played either one of them yet. So, could put them in an interesting position.
Yeah, I mean, Commanders' defense is disgusting on top of that, which again is why I'm more disappointed in the Cardinals. I mean, granted, the Commanders took advantage of it, but Cardinals should have just at least been in that game. That should have been one of the more exciting games of the season.
35-31 is what that game should have been. Even if the Commanders win, 35-31 light show. That's what I thought it was going to be. That was going to be a high score.
The 2 teams we haven't really talked about in this tier, and we don't really got to spend too much, is the Bears. And really, I think that's all Caleb Williams centric for me. If he can get it manageable, I'm not asking for too much. If he can just be manageable, there's enough talent there to where they can just pile up some wins here and there. Much like this last game against the Rams. And then the Chargers, not really too much to say because they're kind of where I thought they would be. And I actually think they beat the Steelers if Herbert doesn't go out of that game. He was kind of dealing.
Yeah.
So long as they get healthy and can keep winning, if the Chiefs keep getting banged up the way they are, Chargers are low-key kind of live in that division, but it really depends on Herbert's health. Defense is faring very well so far.
This team is exactly what I thought it was going to be. Just pretty much Michigan. They're going to play tough defensively. They're going to run the ball, and then they're going to have a quarterback who can make plays. Like JJ made plays when he needed to. That's why obviously he was a top 10 pick. And then you have Herbert. So Harbaugh's just doing what he does at every team. But yeah, next tier, if you're good with that, there's nothing else I got with this one, unless Timmy, you have something.
This tier is shape up or ship out. This is very much do or die tier for me. And there's 4 teams in here, one of which was in the previous tier, and that's the Jets, the Bengals, and Keenan, you kind of teased this without even knowing so, the Cowboys and the Eagles. I definitely think all these teams, again, this is only after 1 month, could look very different in a couple weeks, but their season could go either all the way in the tank or we could be celebrating them because they have the talent to do so, or at least a few of these teams do. But I know the Cowboys and Eagles, they have real expectations in their organizations, but it's been shaky. It's been very shaky for those 2. We just talked about it with the Commanders, with the Giants. I mean, Keenan, you mentioned in the group chat, like disappointments, surprises. My disappointment overall out of this first month, aside from the Jags, would have been the NFC East entirely. Granted, the Commanders now look like a bright spot, but I agree with you. I think 9-8 could win this division. They look more so what the NFC South, I thought the NFC South was going to look like, whereas the NFC South now looks pretty entertaining and looks pretty competitive. Mm-hmm. This division looks competitive, but for the wrong reasons. You know, the Commanders really shouldn't have any business of me asking, hey, can they win the division? I don't think the Commanders are even close to ready yet. But through 1 month, the Cowboys and the Eagles in particular just look very shaky.
I agree with that. Timmy, what do you have to say about that?
I think, what was the 4th team you said? Oh, the Bengals. Okay. Bengals, Jets. Cowboys, Eagles. I think a lot of these teams are just they're gonna finish right around 500. Like they might be a game or two ahead, and that isn't like probably good enough to make it. The Jets have been a big disappointment for me. We were like, it's kind of like the whole Trevor Lawrence thing. You know, we were promised Peyton Manning. We were promised Aaron Rodgers. Like he hasn't, apart from one game against the Patriots where their offense they could not do a thing. Um, we haven't seen it for the Jets. I get it. I'm gonna give them a pass on this last week because the Broncos defense is a lot better, which kind of blows my mind because Sean Payton is not known for being a defensive coach. In New Orleans, they had terrible defenses always. But anyways, good defense, and it was like raining the whole game. It was a sloppy game. I understand. I can give them a pass on that, but against the Titans, they should have throttled the Titans if this is Aaron Rodgers. And then week one, they should have been competitive against 49ers, and they weren't. So I think they're definitely a disappointment. As for the other, the Bengals, I think they're going to bounce back. I think they're going to make it. I think the Bengals right now are the New Orleans Saints of like the 2010s. Terrible defense, but they got a quarterback that can sling it. They can score 30 points,
It's a good
and
comparison.
they can win every game because of it. So
I would maybe lean Packers only because the Saints didn't typically didn't make the playoffs because they were 7-9. The Packers
true.
though with Aaron Rodgers he'd get them to 10-6. But
7-9 with the 5,000 yard quarterback.
literally the same exact thing. But they could be. It's literally the shape up or ship out would be the difference between them being the 2010 Saints or the 2010 Packers. Are you going to miss the playoffs with a great quarterback, or are you going to make the playoffs with a great quarterback? So,
It's great.
yeah.
That's great right there.
No, but I like that.
Quick summary of these four teams, and I kind of gave it with the Cowboys and Eagles. Like the Cowboys, none of us had high expectations for them. This is more so like what they want for themselves, and they still technically, even though all of us were down on the Cowboys, they still have a ton of talent, which is injured right now. Right? They got a lot of injuries on their defense. But when you don't have like an adequate run game in the slightest, it's very hard for you to be a compelling team. That being said, because of how their division's set up, especially because of how the Eagles look right now, they're somehow still live in the division. Eagles look shaky, but they're also hurt. They're going to have Antonio Brown. They get a good buy. Sorry, AJ Brown. They're going to get him back. That's going to fuck me up for the rest of my life. Like I always mix those two up. But Eagles, you could say they look shaky, but they've been banged up enough, and that performance against the Saints on defense in particular was good enough to where they look like they have promise. But even without AJ and Devontae Smith against the Buccaneers, like it just still was not encouraging. Like they just got thrown all over. They got manhandled. So they're a really tough team to evaluate because Hurts does not look good. I think he's got 27 turnovers since week one of last year.
He turns the ball over every game. It's a sure bet that Jalen Hurts is turning the ball over in a game. It's him and Trevor Lawrence. I mean, not even Trevor Lawrence, but like he's turning the ball over every single game. It's like 27 turnovers, 27 games, as you were saying. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's Philly. They're one of these sports cities that really can, like, if you're really listening to the media, if you're listening to social media, if you're listening to the whispers, those walls can close in on you. So, I mean, if you're paying attention to what's going on outside, Philly is a town where if you're 2-2, but those two losses look disgusting, they're gonna focus on those two losses, and those two losses are gonna feel like four losses. So they could go either way. I could very well see them turning it around and looking elite by the end of the season, but I could also see them going 7-9 or something like that, or 7-10. So that's why they are where they are. Jets, I'm extremely disappointed. I mean, I don't love the Jets, but I mean, I completely expect them to handle the Broncos and then go from there. For them to lose that game, I know it's early, but I don't care how bad the weather was. You have to win that game. And I know it came down to a field goal that Zerline missed, but you got to put that one to bed, especially since you have Aaron Rodgers. Like having him in that sort of weather game, how I said him in that Thursday night game after what, 3 games in 9 days or 3 games in 11 days or something like that.
Yeah.
How you'd want Aaron Rodgers in that game. You want Aaron Rodgers in a shitty weather game at home. Those are the games you're supposed to win with Aaron Rodgers. So I think they're going to make the playoffs. I still think they're live for the division, but that's not an encouraging loss by any means to, a rookie who threw for 60 yards and at one point was throwing for -7 yards in the first half.
So All the Bengals start slow. They've been disappointing to me because I thought the Patriots, when you got to win that game regardless if you start slow or not. Just win at 17-16. Like regardless, you just need that win. The Commanders game, we might look back in 4 weeks and think that's not a terrible loss. Obviously, you have a Chiefs tough one. That's a tough loss just because you have the pass interference at the end, and then you beat the Panthers. Regardless of the Panthers were kept it close or whatever, doesn't matter. You got to win. That's all that matters in that thing. So they're a team that the next 4 weeks will be able to really judge their first 4 weeks. Philly, I mean that more so like, were they really that bad of a roster early on and we were just giving them a pass because they are Joe Burrow and because of what their past is, or if moving forward, they really just haven't been a great team. The Eagles have flaws for sure, but they have a lighter schedule. Like they have the Browns coming up, the Giants, the Bengals, the Jags. That's their next four. So like they realistically could be 3-1, possibly 2-2, but they still have a chance there. Jets I've been disappointed in, and the worries that I had about the Jets and the Cowboys, both teams early going into the season, I still have the same worries. The Jets was they don't have cohesion, and coaching wise doesn't seem to be their strong suit, and they don't really seem to have cohesion. Alan Lazard's their number one receiver right now, which is a shock to everyone because obviously Garrett Wilson should be that. And then, I mean, they've only played so much football together, so like they haven't really gotten that rapport yet. You still got to beat the Broncos. Don't get me wrong. If you're the team that you're supposed to be, you still got to beat the Broncos, regardless you have the rapport or not. And so they have been disappointing to me. And then the Cowboys have been kind of what I thought they were going to be. I thought they'd be solid, miss the playoffs. I still have both the Jets and Cowboys missing the playoffs. The Cowboys even more so than the Jets because the Cowboys' next five are the Steelers, which is a tough game. Then they got the Lions, then they got the 49ers, then they got the Falcons, then they got the Eagles, then they got the Texans, then they got Commanders. They have no let up at all. You can't sleep on any of those teams. And the thing about them is they can't, and they're hurt. So you don't have Micah, you don't have DeMarcus Lawrence. Micah's going to be more so going to look to come back. DeMarcus, I think it's 6 to 8 weeks for him. But like, they only have one way to win, and it's 35 to whatever. They can't win any other way. Like
they've got to get out to a hot start. The fact that they can't run the ball at all.
They have to take the ball every time.
They can't run the ball at all, so they got to hit the ground running. So they got to get up in order for them to win, or like you said, hope to get in a shootout. Essentially,
they only can win one way, and you can't be a good team and only win one way. Like, even the Commanders can win. Like, I mean, the Commanders don't have the defense for it, but at least offensively they can run, plus they can throw. But, like, the Cowboys can't. The Cowboys, they need Devontae Adams. Because if you're going to just say, hey, we're only going to throw and we're going to treat this like Madden, get every receiver you can get. Like, you get them all. Like, I don't care. Like, go trade for T. Higgins. I understand, like, what does it make sense of? But, like, if you just said we're not running the ball and defensively you're hurt, every game's a 30. Your teams are putting up 28 plus on your defense, and Dak's going to have to throw it 50 times. Go get every receiver you can get, because Brandon Cook seems like he's going to probably miss time because he does that every year now. So Dallas, I don't want to say no faith. I have little faith in Dallas making the playoffs, especially with that schedule. It's realistic that they come out of their next 6 games 2-4. They could beat the Steelers, but that Steelers game's at home. You've got the Lions. I would have them losing that right now. 49ers at 49ers. Chalk it up. That's a loss. The Falcons game, interesting. The Eagles game, that's at Dallas, so they play them well there. And then the Texans. Like, I'm having them 2-4 right there. So I agree with shape up or ship out. I agree with the tier. I agree with all of them. All teams are there.
You've talked about the Bengals, Keenan, but you did have high expectations for them. You did have them not only going to the Super Bowl, but winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that through 1 month?
I'm only worried because the defense does not look like it has in years past. But then the Chiefs always stick in my head. But Lou Anarumo just always seems to play well against Mahomes. Like, his defense just matches up with Mahomes, and obviously football is like, it's a game of matchups there too. But their defense, in the past, they had like a bend but don't break kind of defense. Right now, it seems like it's Trey Hendrickson or bust. Like he's got to get home or they're not good. So like that's what kind of scares me. Offensively, Burrow's off to the best start he's ever been off to. It's 7 touchdowns, 1 pick, I believe, on the season. He's been a top 5 quarterback in like all statistics, passing touchdowns, completion percentage. I think top 8 in yards. So like he's fine. The offense is fine. Even the Zach Moss, Chase Brown backfield, I'm okay with that. Zach Moss hasn't looked bad. He's always been a good back. And if you have that kind of duo, not a terrible 1-2 punch. Not like it's great, but it's really their defense. So I feel a little bit. I'm concerned a little bit. This Ravens game will tell me a lot, even if they lose it, because I think their schedules will be good enough to where they can get it back. If they get beat down by the Ravens, especially because it's a home game for the Bengals, no, like they're gonna have to just show it to me. But if they win or lose a very close one where they're right there, it's not going to change my opinion too much. They're just going to have to get hot, and I think that's possible to do. We've seen it with teams before.
Yeah, that was well said, and that fits to what Tim said too, comparing them to the 2010s or mid 2000s Saints with Drew Brees, where you kind of go either way depending on how the defense performs. I am concerned, which is again why they were in 2 different tiers of don't let us get more wins, but also shape up or ship out because they could get out of here very quickly.
Yes,
I think all of us we all picked the Bengals to win that Monday night game, didn't we, against Washington? So,
yeah. I meant to mention that on like the upset alerts that we were doing because I meant to mention that possibly could be something, but I never thought that they were actually going to lose. I just thought it was a game that could be closer than the spread.
Sure.
But I did not think they were losing at all.
We were talking about 2010s football before we started recording, and I've mentioned this before, especially last year, like just how much better the product was, especially offensively. Like it seems like as soon as we hit the pandemic or we passed the pandemic, like offense, especially in September and even into October, has turned into slop. Like we've got some fucking ugly games. Like
it used to be the opposite. It used to be like the turn of the weather was the turn of the defense.
Turn of the defense, yes. Like once you got to November, defense started to catch up. Exactly
then it was
right.
like, okay, then that's when the running game mattered. But it was like at this point, quarterbacks were just throwing parties. Mahomes looks like bad.
Yeah,
like he's looked like I don't want to say bad, but he's looked average.
It's for this reason. Part of it is like just defensive strategy, but you can't tell me none of this isn't because of the lack of emphasis for training camp and preseason. So you've heard me talk about how weeks pretty much from Thanksgiving on, it gets really chaotic in the NFL. The beginning of like the first month, September, that's always chaotic, but I feel like it's even more unpredictable. Like I feel like, underdogs have been going insane, whether it's covering the spread or outright winning. That did not happen in the past to this rate. And I feel like it's going to be more and more common. If that's the case, if September's that chaotic and then your mid to late November to January stretch is that chaotic, it makes October and November, that early part, almost like mini playoffs. That's how the NFL is supposed to be anyway, but it's so chaotic that we've got so many 2-2, 1-3 teams with promise. It really turns the league on its head. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we have like an utterly shocking playoff team, and the Vikings right now at 4-0. That's completely shocking. But I wouldn't be surprised to see more of that in years to come, especially if we end up completely outlawing the preseason when it goes to 18 games. So I don't know. The progression of the NFL, especially with the 17-game season, it fascinates me more and more every year because, man, this football is ugly. I don't necessarily hate it, but it's ugly as fuck.
Mm-hmm. What would be that next tier that you have?
I like how your reply to that was, mm-hmm.
Well, no, you're completely correct. No, there's nothing else I even need to say. No, it's been ugly. It's been tough to bet on. It's been tough to predict. It's fantasy-wise, it's been a slew of things. I think it's been very tough. Show. No, everything is like it's extremely tough. Like in fantasy, typically every year I'm upset about trades and no one's making trades. It's hard to make trades. Like, what am I supposed to trade away? Like typically you have enough players on your bench, but when you're especially when you're playing like in a 12-man league, what's there to trade away? Like I made a trade today because I got like a waiver receiver wire, like whatever. Like so it's just tough. This league's sloppy, but you're it's just slop.
It's a weird league. It's a fucking weird league.
Chum.
It's always been any given Sunday, but now it feels like it could be that way damn near all 17 weeks.
Now it's every given Sunday.
Yeah, right.
We
Honestly,
get an upset.
honestly, honestly.
Switch from any to every, absolutely.
And because of that, because of what I just said, how chaotic and how unpredictable September seems to be, uh, the more we get into these 17 slash future 18 game season, this tier is called technically contenders. I'm not sure if I believe yet, but the record would say, hey, I got to take these teams seriously. Number one, I got the Pittsburgh Steelers. I got the Houston Texans in here. I got the Minnesota Vikings, which is obviously the surprise of the season so far. And I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as well as the Seattle Seahawks. So all NFC teams and the Steelers.
All right.
Any team stick
Timmy,
out to either one of you there?
actually,
Or
Timmy, you
teams.
go and then I'll go.
I don't know if one necessarily sticks out. I think the one that would stick out is the Vikings. They're in this tier, right? I didn't hear that.
Yes, they
Vikings.
are. They're
Okay.
the Steelers, the Texans, the Vikings, the Bucks, the Seahawks.
The Vikings obviously stick out because I wasn't very high. I had them as actually the worst team in football. They're clearly not that. They look competent on all parts of the football. Um, what's tough? I think all of these teams are probably going to make the playoffs. The problem with the title is I don't think that they're all contenders. I think they're all playoff teams, but I don't think really any of them are contenders. I think we're going to see them lose wild card divisional games at best. So that's my take on this tiers. Yes, they're all going to be competing teams that are going to definitely get to probably double digit wins and maybe even win their divisions, but I don't necessarily consider them all contenders.
So I think that the Steelers, they're not contenders to me. I would be very shocked if they're playing divisional weekend. The Texans, I think, are just contenders. I truly do. And they haven't even played a great game yet, like a full like team great game, and they're still 3-1. So I think that's there, and I think that's possible. I think they're contenders. I think that the Bucks, actually, I would lean more towards contender than not. I could see them in a championship game, and if I could see you there, then I absolutely would have to call you a contender. You can't be in a Final Four and not be. I just think that right now they're in an NFL that's so unsure. They're exactly sure of everything they do. They just need to do it. And they have the talent to do it. They just because a lot of teams are still finding identities, figuring out things. As Kyle always says, preseason, they're a team that's come into the preseason ready to go. Like everything they don't need to question who they are, what their identity is, what they do well. They do everything that they need to do and that their team's good at. It's just, can you win the games? And I think Baker has shown enough to me for me to have full faith in him. The Seahawks, there'd be technically contenders. I don't know if I can push them up there. I don't know. I couldn't see them in a championship game right now. They have the pieces to definitely get to divisional round, but I couldn't see them winning a divisional round game as of this moment. The Vikings are the interesting one because if you take the quarterback away, everything about this team I could see in a conference championship game. It's literally just, will Sam Darnold continue to be this? It's the same way I felt about Baker last season, where he was playing very well, but how long can this stand up? Because over his career, he didn't. Baker's showing like it's long enough now to where I should just have faith in Baker. In his bad games, they're few and far between at this point. Sam Darnold's been 4 games. Let me see it.
For sure. And again, this is why it's technically contenders. It's not necessarily that I believe in these teams right here. It's more so like in the Texans case, it's what I haven't seen. Yeah, they're 3-1, but I really do not like what I've seen out of the Texans, out of their offensive line, out of their offense in general. I'm very disappointed in their offense, but like Keenan said, them being 3-1, them having actual weapons and a run game, maybe they get their rhythm together and, all is well. But if they continue to be this shaky, I don't know. They look a lot like last year's Texans to me, whereas I expected them to have a jump pretty immediately, given how Stroud played last year, um, given that they really didn't change too much. They introduced Joe Mixon and they got Stephon Diggs, but it really wasn't seismic additions. You know what I mean? They should have been plug and play to me. So I'm disappointed in their offense, and that's why I got them in technically contenders because I'm not sure on them. Keenan, you're obviously more bullish on them than I, but that was the case before the season as well. I think I had them in my contender tier, but kind of with that caveat. So they're where I thought they would be to some degree, but I thought the offense would be better. I thought maybe if it was going to be anything, the defense might let them down a little bit. Um, yeah, I got more to say, but I want to hear from you guys real quick, especially on the Vikings. What's going on with the Vikings to where
Timmy,
like
your thoughts?
what's up?
No, I was saying Timmy's like you're saying what's going on with the Vikings. I'm saying Timmy, you go because I kind of gave my piece already. I think that it's really on Sam Darnold, and other than Sam Darnold, I think they're a contender. So it's just how do I feel about him?
Do you think it's
I
sustainable?
think I do think it's sustainable. I do. I think it's exactly what Keenan said. It's Baker Mayfield on the Bucks. We weren't super bullish on the Bucks when he first started out there. The Vikings have definitely started out a lot hotter than the Bucks were with
Mm.
Baker, but I think it's evident that your situation totally matters. We were talking about this before the pod. Sam Darnold didn't get a good shot in New York, and then he didn't get a good shot in Carolina. He goes to back up a competent offensive coordinator in San Francisco, and then now he's got a gig and it's working with a good offensive coordinator, with a good offensive-minded head coach. I think it is sustainable. I don't think they're going to be undefeated, of course, because that's what fully sustainable would be. But I think they're a
For the
10-win
Pats?
team, and if they're a 10-win team, that's way above everybody's expectations for the year. So
They've got a last place schedule, which matters. So they have not the hardest, and they've already gone through the hardest part, like one of the hardest parts of their schedule, and they came out 4-0. So like they played the Texans, who I think is a true contender. We all have the 49ers as contenders. We haven't mentioned them yet for that said reason. We think the Packers are contenders. We haven't mentioned them for that said reason, and they beat all of them. So like I can't it, and I do think it's sustainable because as we talk about Sean McVay and we talk about Kyle Shanahan, and we're starting to more mention in the conversation Matt LaFleur as he should be mentioned there. Kevin O'Connell, I think, should be right there too. I
For
think
sure.
he's shown over even the past years. I know they had the year that they won every game pretty much by 3 points, and it was like obviously that, but they lost to the Giants in the playoffs. But Kevin O'Connell is shown to be a very good head coach, great offensive mind, and then you pair that with Brian Flores, who is we've already known to be a great defensive mind. So I think it's sustainable. I don't think it's MVP level Sam Darnold sustainable. Like I don't think that because right now he would probably be your MVP of the league, or if not on the short list. So I don't know if that's sustainable, but I don't think you need him at MVP level to win because they've been blowing people out. They haven't just been winning games. I don't think you need him 4 touchdowns to win games. He just needs to make sure he doesn't make mistakes. And when you get T.J. Hawkinson back, you get even more. But there's nothing that they can't do. They can win us. They can run, they can pass, they can go deep down the field, they can go underneath, and that helps when you have the best receiver in football who can literally do whatever he wants to whatever corner he chooses. So
They
I
kind of
think
have a
this team's
case.
for real. It's just I can't buy in on Sam Darnold all the way yet.
They kind of have a case as you're describing that after them being 4-0 to even be in the don't let us get more wins just because they are so dangerous on offense, just because that defense is so formidable as far as, game plan. Um, the Steelers to me, switching to the Steelers, Keenan, you mentioned you don't even see them playing
Yeah,
on divisional weekend. They have a full identity. That's where like I'm almost ready to buy in on them is because they're such a ugly ass team. Like Tomlin just wants to score 16 points. Excuse me. Excuse me. They'll win even almost died there on air. Holy shit. Hold on.
I'm gonna fill in real quick as Kyle's passing away.
Almost died. No.
Um,
I was just
Yes,
gonna
I just
say.
going to quickly say the sentence. Yes, I think that their team and their identity makes it so they're capable of being in every game. I guess for me, I have even more faith in Sam Darnold than I do in Justin Fields. One,
And
and
Russell Wilson.
two, and Russell Wilson. Yes, and
Damn.
two, I just and two offensively, like the Vikings, like into comparing those two because they're in the same thing. The Vikings defensively can compete with the Steelers defensively. The Steelers offensively cannot compete with the Vikings offensively. Their run game has been
I'm
their
surprised to
line
hear
is
you say
because
that
their
because you were.
line. The Vikings have one of the best lines in the league.
Didn't you say
But go
before the
on.
season you hate Sam Darnold? Wasn't that? Didn't you say you had like a
Hate
strong
him?
dislike for Sam Darnold
Uh,
and your
I
quarterback
don't
tiers?
remember, but here's the thing. I can tell you this. I've never been a fan. I'm a fan of Kevin O'Connell. So the fact that
I'm just
the thing
surprised to
with
hear you
Sam
say you have
Darnold
more
is
faith
this.
in him than Fields because you're a Fields guy.
Uh, I like Fields, but I also a situation matters. I'd have more faith in Justin Fields than Sam Darnold if you put Justin Fields in Minnesota and Sam Darnold in Pittsburgh.
Interesting.
The situation's more so what I have more faith in. I don't. The Steelers offensively haven't done anything really. Like Fields is so athletic that he makes plays naturally, but like the Vikings look amazing. The Steelers look like they know it. They just look like a bully. Like they just like, but they look like not like a bully that has a great knockout punch. They just look like the big guy who's like a seven, like who's like 12, but like I'm just bigger than you. So any fight I ever get into, I'm just gonna like lay on you and kind of swing, and I'll win just off of being big.
They're tough.
Like I
They're
mean,
like
that's a way to win.
they're kind of like the
So,
'04 Pistons. Like you don't want to face them. That's why I'm kind of surprised you're not as bullish on the Steelers with Justin Fields being a mobile quarterback because he adds another dimension to that run game, right? So it's more of a ball control. That's exactly what the Steelers want to do. So I guess I'm surprised you're a little down on them. I didn't expect to be this high on them. I really thought they would be 2-2 at the most. I thought Fields would make some mistakes, and he's turned into a really high end game manager.
sorry, your audio went quicker than your video, so me and Timmy both saw your mouth moving, but didn't actually see the. But we didn't hear the words coming out. But afterwards, it lined up. Timmy, what are
Yeah,
your
mine's
thoughts
crazy.
here on this? Anything else here, or else you want to move on to the next tier?
I don't have much to say. I think the Steelers, I think they're really close to being like dead in line with the Chargers, and I'm not calling the Chargers a playoff team. They
Hmm.
both have the same identity. They want to run the ball and they want to play good defense, and I get it. It's good to have their identity. So when they get into those games, they're the ones coming out on top. But the problem with the Steelers is they're likely to see a team like Buffalo or a team like Kansas City in the first week, and they're just not going to win that game. So
Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you guys are saying, but I'm almost ready to buy in on the Steelers. I really am. And aside from them, we didn't really talk about this team much, and they, I think, played the most exciting game of football. Them and the Lions on Monday night. Seahawks. Seahawks, I think, as long as their defense can hold up, and they were playing really well, the defense before Monday night, and they were pretty banged up on the defensive line. But Seahawks could be a team where, they're in the upper echelon. We're looking at them as true contenders, in November, December.
They're a team that has everything, and again, it comes down a little bit to Geno too. But again, Geno has been showing more. Gino's shown for now,
Top five
kind of
dead
like
or
Baker
alive.
has. He's shown. No, I was gonna say Gino has shown more. Like so, like you. I have faith in Gino. Like I don't think to Gino like, oh my gosh, like I just gotta get him out of here. Like I really think he can compete. So it's more so Mike McDonald. How can we still? How can this team progress and show? Because they have great corners. They have great skill position players. Uh, so it's really just how this team can progress and can they really put it all together. So they're a team that has like for me it's a question mark next to them. Like I don't think I could see them in contender conference championship weekend, but I'm gonna leave it. Divisional I could see. Conference I couldn't see yet.
For sure. For sure. And as that was technically contenders after the first month, these are the true contenders, and it's really the same list I had in preseason. We got the Bills, we got the Ravens, we got the Lions, we got the 49ers, and we got the Packers. Uh, Not going to lie, quickly on the Packers, those two starts with Malik Willis feel like they should have lost at least one of them for them to go 2-0 during that period and really save Jordan Love, who looked rusty when he came back against the Vikings this past Sunday, but really started to cook in the second half, really started to find his rhythm. Um, they're completely dangerous to me. Completely dangerous to me. I think they're the sleeping giant out of this whole group right here. Um, yeah, the fact that they could just tread water with Malik Willis, that's going to do wonders for their season, so long as Jordan Love stays healthy.
Yeah. So this whole entire tier, I agree with. Was there 6 teams? Did I miss one? You said Buffalo,
I
Baltimore,
think,
Green Bay, San Francisco, Detroit.
yep.
Okay. Um, I don't have any much to say really about any of these teams. Christian McCaffrey that's going to be a little bit that's concerning. Like obviously he's more hurt, so I feel bad for every fantasy owner that took him number one
Double
because like
Achilles.
they're not getting up. Yeah, so that's a little concerning. But like again, when it comes down to it, they do have Jordan Mason. He does add such a good dynamic to it. But as long as you have Debo, one of the two, you can make it work. Detroit's Detroit. Defensively, still a little bit of questions to have about him, but if Jared Goff's playing at this level, they can beat anyone. Green Bay, I agree with you, sleeping giant, and then Buffalo and Baltimore, two teams who know exactly what they are. Baltimore needs to realize that this last game that they played against Buffalo is how they need to play against every single team, because sometimes they lean away from that, where they need to always play on their terms, and sometimes offensively, I feel like they kind of play to what the other team does. Especially, like, really mostly the Chiefs. But, like, I think that they just need to stop that. Like, again, last year with Lamar, I understand you didn't have Derrick Henry. You still had running backs. You were the number one running team pretty much every year. Doesn't mean you can't run now. So, like, I just think that they kind of change how they play a little bit when Kansas City's against them. And they need to just look at what they did this week and, okay, we're going to win at the point of attack. Derrick Henry, you're going to be Derrick Henry. And Lamar, you just make every play that you need to and be smart. But true contenders, all of them. I agree with all of them. Not much to say about them.
I'm a little surprised by that, Keenan. 2 weeks ago when we did that episode,
Yeah, I thought they were going to lose to the Cowboys, and then I thought they were going to lose to the Bills and be 0-4. But you know what they did? They changed the way that they played, and they changed the way that they were, and they just decided we're going to run all over both of these teams. And they look defensively. I was never concerned about them. It was offensively, can they get it together? They got it together, and they look really good. So they've looked really good the last 2 weeks. So I was completely wrong in the sense of that game. And then once that game, I thought that Buffalo had been playing so well. My opinion can change. Here's the thing. I'm okay to be wrong. And I was completely wrong on the situation. So you're right. I'm fine to be wrong. That was wrong. So yes.
shout out to Kyle's bold take from preseason. He said Derrick Henry was going to go for 212. He went for 199. He's right there. The week before, he went for 151. This is blowing my mind.
On a tear.
Because I penciled him for 800 total yards, and he's already at 480. So he's pretty much got it. I the only thing about the Ravens is even though they started 0-2, I wasn't fazed by it. They can compete with any single team. Similar to the Bengals. Yeah, we didn't see it week one necessarily, but even if the Bengals let up 32, I'm confident that their offense can put up 35 on pretty much any defense. And that's exactly the same thing with the Ravens. I have a lot more confidence in the Ravens defense, so it totally makes sense that they're here in this contenders list. I like the list.
Only thing with the Ravens that is interesting is when they're down, how will they play? Will they still stick to, like, even if they're down 10, will they still understand their identity, or will they change that? It's the only question I really have about the Ravens a little bit. Because when the Ravens have a lead, Obviously, the Cowboys almost made a furious comeback, but when the Ravens have a lead, truly, it's kind of can be lights out because they really can just run the ball and just kill. They can kill you that way. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So real quick, the Packers and Lions, we'll be talking about them a bunch throughout the year. I think that's going to be a neck and neck sort of race along with the Vikings. Like the NFC North in general is just going to be very fun to talk about the rest of the season. Niners are lucky to be 2-2. The fact that they are 2-2, um, with McCaffrey out, with that terrible loss to the Rams, like they're just lucky to be where they are. With Debo missing a game, with Ayuk not being nearly 100% yet, they could easily be in the shape up, ship out group. They're a weird team. They're still contenders, but that's a tough division, and they could cough up some games here early still in October. I do want to talk about the Bills and Ravens game, but to reply to you guys on the Ravens, I'm surprised you guys are like the reason why I would have been worried about them, which I wasn't, but what did worry me so far is the defense. Um, the offense, I've been pretty encouraged by it, even in that Chiefs game. I mean, Isaiah Likely, if he isn't out of bounds there, they win that game. Lamar was rushing all over them. And then week 2, almost identical to, I think, week 2 of last year against the Colts. I don't even know how they lost that game to the Raiders. They just lost a game that they were in complete control of, and they just let a team back in. So they were a very weird 0-2. They weren't your typical 0-2.
Now looking back at it, they do that every year. They do it once a year every year, so I probably should have just like not thought about it as much, but I know what you're saying. It's such a weird game, but they do it once a year. They have one of those what are you talking about losses. And that
For
was
sure.
the one, I guess.
For sure. And yeah, that Cowboys game, I mean, it was the Cowboys. I wasn't really worried about it. If they had a run game, I would be. But that was my worry through the first 2 weeks was really their defense, and still will be going forward. Just because it seems like teams can move the ball on them. But if they can get ahead, I think they can be opportunistic on defense. And then I'm not too worried about the Ravens playing from behind either. I think they can throw the ball. You've got Lamar, who's the ultimate weapon, so I think they can get back on teams. Excuse me.
The thing with them is you can pass on them. That's the one, like the thing. Like we're against the run, they're pretty solid, but you can pass on them, which is why this game against the Bengals could go either way. Because if there's one thing that the Bengals can do, it's pass.
Sling it.
And Joe Burrow has been playing great football over these last 3 weeks. He's been cooking. He's thrown literally one bad ball, really, because that pick was bad. I don't know what he was doing. Just throw the ball away at that point. But other than that, he's been kind of playing lights out. So that's why I'm interested in this game. That game, I truly don't know how I feel about it right now. Like right now, to me, it's 24-24, both teams. So I don't know why I'm winning as of right now. I truly don't know. I don't know why I'm winning as of right now. Like a lot of these games, I have like a feel for, but like the Ravens play the Bengals very well, but the Bengals aren't typically in like a win or go home-ish style situation when they play the Ravens. So it might add something. It's in Cincinnati. The Ravens you can run on them. You can run on the Bengals. So it's like, all of it together. It's just one of those things where it's like,
that's this week, Ravens and Bengals, or is that the following
this week?
That's
1 o'clock.
Okay.
The 1 o'clock game.
Well,
Why?
yeah,
I don't know. We've got Steelers and Cowboys Sunday night, and then we've got this at 1. I understand, but I would switch them. Like I get. There's two storied franchises, and it's not like it's the worst thing in the world, but
we'll get to see a 12-7 game. So
yeah. And then I'm guessing your last tier is just the Chiefs.
It is absolutely the Chiefs. They're in their own tier because they're in a quest for a three-peat, because they should be able to win that division. Chargers might have something to say about it. We'll see. But the Chiefs are banged up, and they're going to have to rely on Travis Kelce way earlier than we thought. Is Rashee Rice officially out for the season yet? Because as of yesterday,
they won't know until Monday.
They said next week.
So it's looking like there's a chance he won't be, because typically, like if it's a torn ACL, you see that. You know it's torn.
One.
So it's something that actually it might be, not that it's going to be he's coming back, because it could just be like a lot of structural damage around the knee to where he won't be able to recover, but it could be something that might be only like he's out for 8 weeks, and that would be a blessing for them. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, I agree with you having the Chiefs just by themselves. Once you win 2 championships, I don't care how you're 4-0, you beat the Falcons. That's a good team. You beat the Ravens. You beat the Bengals, and then you beat the Chargers, and all 4 good teams. So I really don't care how you get the wins. You get
And
on a three. You're on a three-peat. Plus you're 4-0. You're on your own tier until you lose games multiple.
they are the ugliest of 4-0s. And
Yeah.
I will say this going into our October schedule, I think 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, I forget, I said Bills Chiefs on a neutral field. I would take the Bills. And I feel more confident about that today. I think I'd even put the Ravens in that category today as well. And I don't know, man. I am very interested to see how the Chiefs get through this because they're only getting more and more banged up. They don't have a ton of weapons on offense. Once they get Pacheco back, everything should kind of fall in line. But the fact that you're counting on Kareem Hunt right now on top of Kelsey, regardless if Rashee Rice isn't out for the season, he's going to miss extended time at the least. That being said, if
They're gonna be in the hunt for a wide receiver. They're like, I know Devonte Adams hasn't really been on their board, but like
I was about to say, if they get
Amari
Devontae
Cooper,
Adams, everyone should be worried.
DeAndre Hopkins, someone like that. Call the Dolphins for Tyreek Hill. Like, just do something.
I'm a
Like,
I'm usually like very pessimistic when it comes to a receiver asking for a trade midseason. It seems like that trade never actually happens. Like it usually happens in the offseason. I actually think Devontae is going to get traded, and it makes a ton of sense for them to trade him now. I would assume so,
there's
especially
no
after this
reason
whole
for him.
Antonio Pierce thing. That's fucking wild. But he's going to have value. And if he ends up on the Jets or if he ends up anywhere that's close to contention, even if you're like a middle of the pack team that has a quarterback who can at least throw, that's going to be a big weapon for someone, to say the fucking least.
It's looking like the Jets are the Saints. Those are the 2 teams he's chosen. So I guess the wide receiver coach in New Orleans was the same coach that coached him at Fresno State. Plus, you have Derek Carr there. So, like, there's rapport within the organization, the pieces in the organization with Devontae. So he would like that. And then obviously playing with Aaron Rodgers, too. So he wanted to go to somewhere he's familiar. From what everyone's been saying, obviously we never know. They have to make a deal to make a deal.
Yeah.
But, like,
Best offer.
those are the two leading contenders for Devontae. But I truly think by the trade deadline, Devontae's gone. For the Raiders, it makes no sense. You're going to have to pay him a lot of money over here the next couple of years. So honestly, you might have to cut him because like at some point, like, and it's weird because he's such a good player that good players like that get cut often. It's like at this point, trade him, get him off of your salary or like get him off of the books for you, even if you have to pay a lot now, like to kind of to make a deal work or something like that. Whatever it is, you can get him off of your books, get him to somewhere, and not that teams do this, but do right by Devontae. He wants to try to go compete for a championship. If he feels like he can do it in New Orleans or New York, even though I may not feel strongly because I don't think either are making the playoffs as of this moment in time, if he feels it, let him go do it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to
Bold
do what's
take.
best for the
Sorry.
franchise too. You got to take the best offer.
Oh, I mean, of course. Yeah, I don't mean just like, oh, if they're offering a fourth and someone's offering a second, of course you trade them to the team that's offering you a second. But like, so like, if their offers are like, obviously those are the teams that are going to want something. But with Devontae, I would obviously try my best if I could to send him to a contender. He's been nothing but like a professional there. He didn't even like really demand a trade. He said I would like to be like, if it's all right, pretty much. If it's okay, I could like to be traded. I think it wasn't even made like I don't want to be here anymore. And apparently the coach was like, a coach doesn't want him there.
He asked politely.
I think that's what I'd heard. I'd have to actually read it, but like I think he said something in a polite manner. But regardless, Devontae trade. I think that there's definitely teams out there that are suited and need him. Where would you think he should go? Where would you be your number one destination for him? Timmy, I'll start with you. Kyle, then I'll say mine.
Man, I don't know. I don't have a good destination. I personally do not think he gets traded to the Jets. I think, yeah, it's where he wants to play, but eventually there's like something's got to give with the Jets. Aaron Rodgers comes in and he just has this list of demands. Devontae was on that list prior
Mm-hmm.
to the season. If they get Devontae and it's anything encouraged by Aaron Rodgers, it's literally the New York Aaron Rodgers now. They're not the Jets anymore. He runs that franchise. He's their GM now. And it's just crazy to see that one player can have that big of an impact. I think he probably does get traded. I don't know where. I don't have a good take for you, but I do have a take. I think 2 weeks from now, Amari Cooper will be a Kansas City Chief.
Oh,
That's my take.
I like
specifically
it.
2 weeks from now.
Yep. When the Browns are 1-5 and ready to ship it, the Browns converted all of his contract into a signing bonus, so they can trade him right now, and the team doesn't. Whoever gets him doesn't have to pay him anything, pretty much. So, I think they were doing that strategically to get him. If this was the
Yep.
case, they can at least get some value for him. So,
So I personally think maybe the Chargers would make sense.
Ooh.
I think
in
I think if
division though, that's why I didn't want him going to the Chiefs was because I just don't think an in
but I
division
also
deal would happen.
see. I don't think so, but at the same time, I also don't know. I don't know why it would be so bad. I mean, the if you're a team that's not going to win, and you could take away from another team in your division for the future, then I would do it. Like, I mean, it's different if you're like like if the Chargers were like, yeah, we'll trade the Chiefs, Derwin James, because both teams look like they're going to win. The Raiders aren't going for anything right now. They're just trying to establish themselves as like a respectable team. So, like, they're not on the same timeline as the Chiefs. Devontae is going to be there in a couple years. And if you could say take like a third round pick, second round pick from the Chiefs or the Chargers, that's another piece that they don't get moving forward. That's when you're that kind of thing. But at the same time, a lot of people like they're in division don't do that. So I get what you're saying.
I was mesmerized by the cats behind Tim. They were like, they were having a party back there. Who should be after Devontae? The Chiefs should be after Devontae at this point right now.
Yeah.
But like Tim said, it's pretty much sacrilege to trade in division any sort of impact player. Fuck. So I can't imagine him going to the Chiefs or the Chargers, anywhere in division. And if it was going to be outside the division, the Saints make a lot of sense if that's where they want to go. And, if they feel confident about their team, them being a dome team, like that could be pretty dangerous with Derek Carr and with that offense. Um, the Chiefs should be the number one team after him, though. I mean, you get them, and I do want to ask, like, how do you feel about them at this moment right now? Like, how do you project their season without a real weapon? Like, if they're gonna be without Rice and Hollywood Brown the entire year, they need something because Kelsey's either gonna get hurt trying to go into November, December form this early, or I just don't see how it's sustainable with the roster with how banged up they are. They're going to get to the playoffs, but I don't know. I don't really know what to expect out of them because they've looked so shaky, yet they're still 4-0 here.
So I think they're going to be the one seed still because I think now
I
the
don't
teams
I don't think they're going to be the one seed.
I don't know who would be. They have the tiebreaker now over the Bengals and the Ravens already, so it'd have to be Buffalo. Do you feel like Buffalo's 12-5?
I feel like
13
Buffalo. I feel like Buffalo has a higher shot at getting, 11 or 12 wins than they do at this point.
I mean,
they've got a lot of tough games on their schedule, and you can't win this ugly and rely.
They've got
defense.
4. So they typically are 5-1 at minimum in the division. So that's another 4 wins. So that is 8 right there. Then you play the Browns. That to me is a win. You play the Panthers. That's a win. So that is 10 wins right there.
Here's the thing, though. We're shooing them in for that, but they're there's only so I mean, they can't win this way without Pacheco on top of their top two receivers. If they had Pacheco, I would agree with you. I'd probably agree with you that they could just win ugly. I don't think Kareem Hunt, no Rasheed Rice, no Hollywood Brown, and 50% of Travis Kelsey, I don't think they can get too far with that. I think they're going to win the division. I think they can get to 10 wins maybe. But 11 or 12,
I
that's
have the I think they can be 12-5 realistically. I think they
that's
can
a
be,
lot. That's saying you could take anybody and just put them with Mahomes and Andy Reid and win. And I don't really think that's the
Mahomes,
case.
Andy Reid, and Chris Jones with Travis Kelsey. That is a very
Like,
good.
Spags is the MVP right now. Their defensive coordinator to me is the MVP.
Yeah,
And I get.
I mean, you have that.
I completely get what you're
their
saying.
Their defense is really good. Like they're legitimately really good, and so offensively, it's like okay, so if the defense is going to keep you in games, then it comes down to can Mahomes makes plays down the stretch. I'm going to take. I think I see them 12-5. It's personally where I see them, and I think they're 12-5, and it could come down to that November 17th game of Buffalo versus Kansas City for the 1 seed. And at that point, they should have Isaiah Pacheco back because I believe it was 6 to 8 weeks. Now it was a few weeks ago. So Pacheco could be back for that game. Obviously, we don't know about Rasheed Rice. He's probably not there for that game. And if Timmy is correct, which I think they're going to land something, if you have someone like an Amari Cooper there, I think that you're okay. But I get what you're saying as presently constructed. I get where your skepticism comes in, and I think it's fair. I just think they're 12-5 when the season ends, and that's the 1 seed. But they could not be.
Yeah,
it could be 11-6, 10-7. I got them 12-5 in the 1 seed right now.
Yeah, no, I just think they've won not only ugly but fortunate. It's been a lot of teams shooting themselves in the foot. So, Tim, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, but it's been against the best, which is why I changed. I think that. But Timmy, you go.
Looking at the schedule, I think at most they got 6 losses. They got the 49ers, the Bucks, the Bills. I have the Steelers as like a toss-up. I'm going to give them 1 Chargers game. Obviously, they just beat the Chargers, but I think if Herbert is healthy, the Chargers can beat them. And then the Texans, that's 6. I think the rest of their games are kind of cake games that they're probably going to win. They don't need Rashee Rice to win those games. I think.
And out of those 6, do you think they're all 0-6?
Probably not.
So that's the thing. Like I mean, they could give up one of the cake games, but that would mean that they're going 1-5 against those 6 teams. I think they could go even 2-4 and still be. I just see 12-5 just feels.
I think
right.
I think 11 wins is their basement. I think that's as low as they're gonna get. So they're in line for the 1 seed. I can see it 100%. I am a little bit more confident that Buffalo gets to 13 wins, and then they just beat them out that way. So that's my take.
I do think 13's wild. 13's wild, but
there's always a 13-win team every year.
Correct. The Chiefs, I don't know. What's their next 4 exactly? Because I think they look so ugly that eventually.
In order, their next 4 is they play the Saints on Monday night, which I think is a win. Then they go to San Fran. I think that could be a loss, but also at the same time, they still don't have McCaffrey, but I still think that could be a loss. So that one's the one that's a toss-up. That they play the Raiders, I think that's a win, and then they play the Bucks at home. So that one's interesting. So that's their next 4. I think they could still be even 2-2 over their next 4. That puts them at 6-2. Then they see the Broncos, the Bills, the Panthers, the Raiders. That's a 4-0, or if not 3-1 stretch.
I'm gonna lay it out.
So like if that's 10-2, that's 9-3. I think at worst they're 8-4 after all of that.
I'm gonna lay it out for you. So I think this next stretch, these next 4 games, are going to be the toughest part of their schedule, given the injuries that they have. I think they will lose at least 2 of their next 4 games. Might even go below 500 with that, but I think they at least split. And then after that, we'll see if there's a trade to be made, if they take off, if they really find their rhythm on offense. But as presently constructed, I mean, we saw them lose to the Raiders on Christmas Day last year. Raiders just kind of no kind of about it. They straight up locked them up, right? And that offense on that day, who their personnel was, I like better than what it is today without Rasheed Rice, without Hollywood Brown. Kelsey again, hardly making an impact here, and no Pacheco. So, I think it's reasonable, especially after what we saw from the Broncos this past Sunday against the Jets, especially what we've seen from the Raiders, weirdly being able to compete. I mean, their defense is doing okay. They're not creating the pressure you would think, but they've got 2 wins. So I don't think it's out of the realm that they could fall to the Raiders or the Broncos. Whereas last year they could kind of just win ugly. But if they're so banged up, at some point it's going to be hard to just continue to win those games. And it's not really going to matter because they're still probably going to win their division and they'll for sure be in the playoffs. But 12 wins is a lot of wins.
It is. But I do like your tier list overall. I think that the Chiefs definitely deserve to be at the top. And obviously we've kind of went back and forth on a little bit of these. But like overall, I think that you've got every team around. I don't think there's a glaring like, oh my gosh, how do you not have the Rams up with the true technically contenders? Kind of like they don't have. I don't think you have anybody out of placement. I just think you could maybe adjust a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
But like that's every list. That's every list.
And the tier is more based on where you are rather than how good you are or how bad you are. The Chiefs are in their own tier because of their situation. As you just heard me say, I don't necessarily think they're the best team in the league at all. I'd put a few teams ahead of them probably. But because of their record right now, because of their past, and where it looks like they're headed, regardless of the injuries, you got to put them in their own tier. But I don't necessarily think they're the best team right now. But they got the bullseye on their back as they should, as they've earned it.
All right. So we got one more thing that we need to discuss real quick. Thursday night football. What do we have?
Shit, yeah. Forgot about that.
It is.
That
we've
in
got
Tampa
the Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading to Atlanta.
In Atlanta.
Timmy, what do you have for this game?
Do you have the spread?
Hold on just a second. I'm about to get it.
My guess is that it's Tampa Bay -2.
I think it's going to be the Falcons -2.5 is what I think it's going to be.
I'm going to take the Bucs regardless. I think they look a little bit more fluid on offense. We've seen enough from the Falcons to say that, they can score 20 points. I think it's going to be 26-18, and they're going to pull it out.
Yeah, the Bucs 26-18, and it's a 1.5 point favorite for the Falcons.
This is a division I wasn't expecting to be excited about. Like going forward, I'm very much going to be looking forward to the Atlanta, New Orleans, and Tampa Bay matchups as far as those three facing each other. I kind of wish this wasn't a Thursday night game. I do not like the early Thursday night games at all. I feel like they're ugly games. But this could at least be a semi-entertaining one. I think it's going to be in the low 20s. I think it's going to be 24-21. And it's a coin flip for me. I think either team could win. I actually feel better about Tampa at this point in time. I'm going to go with the home team here. Atlanta Falcons. Kirko Cousins.
We had the Falcons a lot on prime time.
That they do.
They've been a heavy primetime team. I've got Tampa, and I got Tampa 27-24. I think that with the Bucs in this game, it's just they know exactly who they are, which is why I'm high on this team. And the Falcons are still trying to figure out a little bit. Like they understand, like this is what we should do, but like how we get Bijan, how we get Kyle Pitts, Drake London, the touches we need to, how can we? They have a lot of talent. They're working the talent together. I think the Bucs know just who they are at this moment. I think that maybe if the Falcons were to see them in I don't know when they play next, but in 5 weeks, maybe I feel the Falcons are even a better team than them. But right now I've got Tampa Bay 27-24. I think it'll be a fun one. So that is the NFL portion of everything that we have here. Obviously, we got the picks for the night. We've got Kyle's tiers. We laid them all out. went in depth on all of these teams, even longer than we expected. Obviously, I feel like as the season goes on, we can probably cut it in half because, like, as the season's over for the Patriots, we don't really need to talk about them because their seasons really will be over at that point. But it's 4 weeks in. We got to just give every team at least a little bit. But Warner Brothers Podcast, Instagram, Warner Brothers Podcast. We've got obviously our YouTube channel. We have our streaming start. Obviously, we're on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify as well. So like us all there. But we appreciate all of you guys, and we will see you guys very soon.